Hi, welcome to Cyber Thoughts, where we explore the world of cybersecurity through leaders in the field. Today it is my great pleasure to bring back Mike Privette. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Lucas, thanks for having me back.
Well, thanks for joining us. So, for those who don't remember, don't know, Mike leads Return on Security, which is a treasure trove of information. It's a newsletter. Well, Mike, why don't you describe what you do first, and we'll kick it off from there.
Yeah, it's really a market intelligence firm, is what I like to call it. But I take sort of a threat intelligence approach to tracking all of the economic activity in the cybersecurity industry for both public and private markets. And the most common way people interact or receive all that kind of information and data is through the weekly newsletter called Security Funded, and where I just recap everything that happened last week. But behind the scenes, I'm always collecting data, building out a bunch of charts and graphs, and just trying to track trends largely across our industry. And then I share it out for free because I love data.
Awesome. So, just to start off with, I read your newsletter religiously because it is just such a great source of data, and it's a primary source for me at least. So why don't we kick it off with Q3? What was Q3 like for cyber investing, for mergers acquisitions? Just give us a feel for how Q3 was.
Yeah, Q3 honestly was a really big quarter for this year, and honestly, the whole year has been strong in momentum, and it continued on through Q2 and Q3. So a lot of funding dollars went into Q3. Quite a bit more, like over $5 billion just invested in Q3 for public and private companies, which is huge. And uh, I expect that trend to honestly just keep continuing still strongly into Q4, but I don't think we'll necessarily get the entirety of like that much as the year winds down. But it's still like there was also a big month or big quarter for acquisitions, more activity in general already in 2025 than 2024, just through Q3 year to date. And so we're just continuing to see that upper momentum that's just rising as the rest of tech and the rest of AI pushes much of the industry up.
So that's a little bit surprising to me because where I sit, the M&A market felt a little weak in the first half of the year. So has it come roaring back in Q3 and this year is good because of Q3? Or was it steadier along the way and I just wasn't attuned to it?
No, so Q1 was pretty weak, but slightly better than the previous year. But Q2 was the breakout. That's where most of the transaction, it was almost double the previous year's Q2 total. And then Q3 just kind of kept up with the strong momentum. And then now Q4, even though we're barely into Q4, it's already surpassed all of last year's Q4. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
it's it's just a continuing trend. And to be honest, most of these transactions are not the gigantic, flashy, very huge tickets that you see some of these companies do. Most of them are just undisclosed, small, one service company buying another service company, or one MSSP buying a professional services company or a product company. And so they're small, but my goal is to try to capture it all, even if it's small or service based, instead of just the big, sexy, flashy stuff we see.
Gotcha. And Wiz happened. Does that skew the numbers? Is that a giant piece of it? Because I mean, you're talking about a bunch of smaller stuff, but Wiz is what, 30 some odd $billion. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, 32 billion is, I think, almost 75% of what all of last year's M&As were, just in one transaction. So I try to track volume in terms of like how many, and then also, of course, what's the dollar transaction. So it's both. So both are up. Wiz, of course, incredibly skews it. Last year, the second or biggest deal, which was previously the first biggest deal, was when HP bought Juniper for 14 billion, which also skewed the numbers. But there's so much that's unknown. Like so many transactions do not have disclosed terms, probably because they're not that interesting, or from an exit multiple or thing like that. So a lot of them just are private.
So, to your mind, so far this year, Wiz obviously, but what are kind of the bigger, more important acquisitions or even investments? If you got ideas on where you think the real interest is.
Well, I mean, this year we're seeing, I'd say, more consolidation on things outside of, kind of the traditional things that are getting funded. So, you often will see this wave of companies or products or markets that'll get funded a lot, and then every 2 to 3 years later they start getting acquired by the larger incumbents and the private or public companies that want to buy the innovation and or buy the revenue or in their way into a market. And this year, it always comes back to some of the like basic, I would say, blocking and tackling. So, interestingly enough, with the data I've been tracking, there have been more email security acquisitions this year than any other type of acquisition outside of like professional services. So that's an unusual kind of anomaly, I would say, and then followed quickly by anything in like the identity security space. So those two core pieces of cyber identity and email are still very much in demand.
And when you think about the buyers, I often think about the platforms as being, CrowdStrike or
Yeah.
Paolo or Microsoft or Zscaler as being kind of the big buyers. Are you seeing a lot of action from them, or is it other things? It's PE shops putting things together. Where are you seeing that?
Yes, I mean the big ones are buying, but they're usually buying what's the latest. Like they're buying the AI security company, and then they all buy some similar version of AI security companies to kind of keep pace with that or be involved in that market. But by and large, most of the volume happens well outside of that. It's regional roll ups, so it's like a large MSSP in one region wants to enter another either country or region. That's a great roll up strategy. It's PE firms, or it's just companies who are product companies who are in a space but want to be in an adjacent space to try to like more round out a portfolio play or round out like a platform play. They're the ones who are doing most of the buying.
Totally interesting. And on the funding side, I assume that's sort of the regular players, i.e., if you look at the league tables, Andreessen is the inventor, kind of the biggest investor. Are they also the biggest investor in cybersecurity?
They're pretty big, but if you look at like the Evolution Equities and the Insight Partners, like these companies who've raised very large or multi-billion-dollar funds, they have a lot of money to deploy, so they have to be in almost everything. So they do a lot of big deals and they do a lot of teaming up with like corporate venture capital groups, and so they're extremely active, I would say. And then there's a lot of VCs who just get in on a lot of deals, and so they partner smartly. So that's the and you always see like kind of like ones who operate in unison or tag along. Like there's a couple that follow along, KKR and others whenever they make an investment. So you can see patterns that way, but it is still much of the same like core collection of a few hundred VCs globally, kind of investing in a space with a couple of new entrants.
Very, very cool. All right. So we've mentioned AI already. Got to talk about it.
Yeah.
And you and I you were showing me some really interesting data. Why don't I let you walk through that? But this is just fascinating. So you've got a dashboard that you're looking at.
Yeah. I'll share it here. Here we go.
Got it. So
All right. So
explain this to anyone listening, especially if you're watching, you get to see it. But if you're listening, what do you got here?
Yeah, so this is the dashboard I've been working on, just in taking a quick step back on the data front. So part of return on security, the goal for me is to track all of the financial inputs and outputs in the industry. So everything down from like a grant stage from like a company you've never heard of in a country that you didn't know had any cyber presence, all the way up to the largest doing like post IPO equity or debt rounds and things like that. And then I categorize everything and I group everything up in a way to let me observe some trends. And one of the more interesting pieces is obviously AI security. It's like it's impossible to know or possible to read anything on any platform that's dealing with security that does not also mention AI. And so, I always find it fun to look closely at the data to see, what is it actually telling me? What am I seeing here? And how big of an impact is it really? So what I have here is a chart that shows the domain of AI security, which in my mind right now includes kind of two large buckets. So that's the security for AI, so securing the actual LLMs and the foundation models and anything that makes the usage of an AI platform, be LLM or otherwise, more secure. So that's one large bucket. And then the second bucket is your AI for security. So that's using AI to do any other security function. So whether that's better log ingestion, whether that's better CVE determination, whether that's better vulnerability management, or threat hunting, you name it. That's kind of the other large catch-all category. And so I've been tracking those since 2023 when it really came out on the scene and companies started, investing in that or coming out of the stealth, saying, "Hey, we do something specifically for AI in and around this space or with AI. And so the chart here shows a 3-year look back. It's 2023 to as of today, the day we're recording this in November 2025, of data of just how much the entire industry has raised in funding versus the domain of AI security, which includes those two subdomains, AI for security and security for AI. And when you look at the data closely, I've actually kind of gotten broken down into each category. So in 2023, to be expected, it was a small year because that was the year ChatGPT came out and hit the scene. So a lot of people were just ready to react to that, but not many. So less than 2% of all funding that year out of 13 billion, which 2023 was a historically kind of low year after the collapse of the 2022 and the end of zero interest rate phenomenon and the end of free money and
Goodbye, Zoe.
back to austerity measures. So not much in there. And then when you look at 2024, a bit of a rebound year for the industry as a whole, more money. The percentage in AI security investing went up to almost over 2.5%. So that's quite a big jump from under 2% to 2.5%. And overall, the industry had about 14 billion invested in it that year. And then jumping now to just year to date 2025, a lot more money has been invested into or been funded into the cyber industry. Now 17.5 billion total. But still, even with all the hype and with all the everything going into AI security, still only under 3.5% has been invested in AI security so
and that's
far.
both security for AI and AI for security.
That's right.
Which I found shocking because I can't look at a company that doesn't. Every company I speak to has some AI story. So
Yes.
is that they don't have enough of an AI story to make your cut? Or no, it's just a really big industry and it's going to take some time.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both, but it's a really big industry. But also, so I think something different's happening in that it's what's instead of being like completely changing how we think about security in all aspects, I think it's actually being absorbed into just the rest of security. So, now to build a company in this day and age is to use the AI just the same way you'd use the cloud. Like it is a basic expectation of business building, of product building, of feature development, delivery. So it's now become companies have kind of realized that it's less of a differentiating point. So yes, of course they need to be using it, but often what they're doing with AI does not in and of itself change how they're it changes how they're doing it, not what they're doing, if that makes sense. So,
Yep.
as an example, I always like to use using AI to improve the efficiency and efficacy of data loss prevention. Is that an AI security company, or is it a DLP company that uses AI to be much better than the other DLP companies? And it comes down to like a categorization and differentiation around that front. But I think buyers are kind of realizing that just slapping AI on a security product does not in and of itself change what it tries to do, and also does not make it special. And so I think that's part of it. Is I think some of those categorizations are much less important now because it's now just a normal way of operating instead of like, so unless you're specifically securing a foundation model, you're probably not doing security for AI is the takeaway.
Yeah, like AI is like MSG. It makes everything taste better, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the way I'm framing it and tracking it anyway. They say, all data is bad, but some of it's useful. And so that's kind of the way I think about this.
No, it's really cool. I hadn't seen anything like this before. Kudos. It's a really cool chart. So let me take it another way. What areas do you personally find kind of interesting, right? So if I talk to the world at large, identity, like every CISO is talking about identity. There's a ton of identity startups. Doesn't mean it's a bad place to play, but it's an obvious place to be playing right now.
Yeah.
What's exciting you?
To be honest, like I'm excited about a lot of different stuff, and I'm honestly I'm excited just about the speed at which things can become true. And now that you can use AI to build things and it's no longer like the end product, now you can make things possible that were not possible before at like a much greater scale with like much less overhead and much less technical input required from the people and the teams who run it. So I kind of always gravitate back to like, how do you make the unsexy things better and more or less unsexy? And so like, I'm excited when I see tools that are using or like making the stuff that falls out in between looking and running a tool every day to then how do I then take the output of that and then transform it into something that either another team can use or that I can report on to an executive about, or that I can like make a real decision about, as opposed outside of just this needs to be patched. Um, so I tend to have a lean towards things like that, like things that make the process of doing GRC better. Like, so not SOC 2, not the compliance frameworks, but and this is more of a bigger company problem, but like the practice of GRC and running a business and helping companies understand like what they're doing with risk, I think is interesting. Historically not sexy, but could be very sexy with the right AI.
Here's a question
And
for you. Sorry.
your
Yeah. So you mentioned large companies. I'm seeing a lot of people trying to play more in the mid market now, as
yeah,
opposed to the Fortune, let's call it 1000, which has
yeah,
been the bread and butter of cybersecurity for a decade or more.
yeah.
Like, are you seeing that in the data? And do you think that's because, the above the security power line has been done, or is it just the attackers have moved and so defense is moving? Like, how do you think about that?
I think, well, this may not be a popular answer, but I think that dichotomy will always exist. And I think chasing the mid market is a bit of like chasing a ghost in the machine, because there are so many of these like point product things that if they just capture X% of the mid market, they'll be billionaires. And the trouble with the mid market is it's not like the large groups on the outside of the bell curve. It's not the Fortune 1000. They're so heterogeneous. There's so many different companies and styles and approaches that mid space. That's where services live. Like that is service land through and through. And I think that's the only way you reach those people. But then even services, managed service, professional services are so incredibly different in their delivery and like what they're capable of doing that it's hard to understand that space as well. I've heard of more companies trying this, and I think many of them end up saying, "Wow, that's really not worth the effort and return. I think we better go up the ladder a bit." And so I don't think that'll ever go away because truly the bigger companies have more time, people, and resources to like think about these problems. Like they can think about what threat hunting is, whereas you'll never get somebody in mid market thinking about that when they have too many other things in security and IT to do. So I think that's
Yeah,
this
it's
is
also more
my personal
valuable to them,
opinion.
right? They've got willingness to pay for it because it's a $1 billion company has they've got a lot more to lose, or a
Yeah,
$20 billion company or $100 billion company has a lot more to lose than a $50 million.
yeah, and they have more people to like think about these things to like, and that goes a long ways. It's like it's not that these people in mid market probably don't care about some of these things; they just can't care about them all at the same like weight.
Yep. Cool. So I'm going to briefly summarize. We're in a good spot this year, especially versus like last year. Q3 was a banger, and Q4 is already better than a year ago Q4.
Hmm.
So that should make those of us investing in and hopefully selling companies in cybersecurity happy. Um, and then I thought that the data on AI was super interesting. So I'm gonna keep watching you for that. Where can people find you? And then you do these deep dive reports. Kind of what's coming out next from you.
Yeah, so people can find me at returnonsecurity.com or on LinkedIn. I'm under Mike Privette. And yeah, I'm always tracking for deep dive. I've always had many plates kind of spinning in the air. One of which is services, to be honest, because anything that's hard to dissect or it looks very ugly from the outside, I like to look at. Some writing about that, and then also some pieces about data privacy as well, just because that's totally exploded now and gotten much easier to run with on the AI front. So yeah, and then many other things planned for next year already.
Nice. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to see you. You have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me again.
Cheers.